Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, we're talking about tools. Now, I think sometimes there's this term called hide in plain sight, where concepts that are extremely simple or have the potential to be extremely simple tend to elude us as humans, because I think we're kind of caught up in looking for things that are like super beautiful or super complex, and we're always like making things more complicated than they have to be. And I think I'm going to try and say something simple, and I'm going to spend 20 minutes saying it, so it's probably going to get complicated, but talk about important concepts in my life personally, to be selfish for a second and say like, yo, this is important, listen up. But you're already listening to my podcast, so you're like already listening, so that's kind of, I don't need to say that. But tools, Tools, is the concept or the topic of discussion for today. And what I want to say is that everything, and I mean everything, every noun is a tool. Every person, every place, everything, an idea. And I'm not saying you should use people, but there's a phrase, what is it? Guns don't kill people, people kill people. And I think it's something that is said to kind of emphasize the fact that, like, the gun isn't necessarily the deadly thing. It's what someone is doing with the gun that is deadly. And to that, the gun is a tool. And tools, I think, have no naturally endowed moral compass. There's no such thing as an evil tool or a good tool in terms of good and bad. I know there's good tools in terms of this tool does a job really well, but there's no such thing as like this is a bad tool, like it's only used for evil. Anything, even an atom bomb can be used for good, by which I mean a nuclear power plant, if you do it right. So I'm going to focus today on objects and concepts. I think those are the most, at least in my life, to be selfish and only talk about things that are important to me. The most important things that I view as tools. But yes, hammers are tools, and you can build a house with a hammer, and you can also tear a house down with a hammer. You can attack someone with a hammer, or you can make a nice coffee table. It's all up to you. My principal in high school, my first principal, he used to say this thing on the announcements every day. At the end of the announcements, he'd be like, "And remember, Titans, make it a great day, or not. The choice is yours." And that's like the whole idea that I'm trying to explain today, where you, the user of the tool, have a choice on how you use the tool. And the tool can be anything. The tool can be anger. The tool can be a screwdriver. The tool can be a concept, like one of the things that I talk about in the podcast. So we talked about good vibes. That can be something that you can use for good or bad, depending on your perspectives. But everything that you have available to you that you're aware of, you can use for whatever you want. And it may not be a good tool for that. Like, so maybe the screwdriver may not be the best tool to get you to work. Like, maybe a car is a better tool for that. But you can try to use a screwdriver to get you to work, I guess. I'm not saying it's a good tool for that, but you can use tools for whatever you want. That's what I'm trying to get across. And I think sometimes we get caught up in thinking that certain tools or certain concepts have connotations or associations with very particular actions or methods, like guns. I think a lot of people associate guns with violence and bad. No. And maybe that's just the Californian in me, where we're like liberal, but in a lot of cases, guns are dope. Guns help protect your family. Guns can help you acquire food. Guns are a cool sport to show your marksmanship. Guns are, they're tools, and you can use them to shoot people, or you can use them to shoot targets. But that's up to you. And the same goes for literally everything. Like fear. I think fear is one of the tools that I think often is treated like it's only used for one thing. But I think depending on how you look at something, it changes what you're able to do with it. There was a really interesting episode of Pokemon back when I was a little kid. If you're up on the 90s cartoons game, where like Ash, he was already a trainer. He was like a Pokemon trainer for a while, but he went to this like Pokemon Trainer Academy for some reason, even though he was already a trainer. And they were like quizzing him, and there was this like screen, and it was like, what Pokemon is this? And it was like a shadow, and the shadow was like a perfect sphere. And Ash was like, oh, I know this one. And he was like, it's a Voltorb, which is a spherical Pokemon. And then they were like, and the answer is a Jigglypuff, seen from above. And a Jigglypuff is like only spherical when you look at it from above. And so it was an interesting thing. But like depending on your perspective, the way that you use a tool can change. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm also trying to plug Pokemon because it's great. But fear is something where I think a lot of people think it's like an impediment to action, and they're like, I don't want to be afraid. I want this, blah, 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 blah. And, more power to you for having your own perspective. I empathize, I sympathize, and, peace be unto you. The way I think about fear is like a focus tool. It's like a laser focus tool. And it helps, it heightens your senses, it gets you some adrenaline going, and the thing about fear, I feel like it's a laser pointer that forces your focus on whatever the laser pointer is pointing at. And it's almost like you don't get to decide when the fear turns on, but if you catch it right, like if the fear turns on and you notice it right away, you may not be able to turn it off, but you may be able to point that laser somewhere useful. And then rather than having it point at something that's not useful, like what you're afraid of, you could point it at something that is useful. So like when I go rock climbing, sometimes I do some like reckless things, and I go way too high, and I'm like, wow, this is scary. Sometimes I look down, and I was like, oh, I told you not to look down. Why'd you do that? And then I start getting scared. But then that feeling that makes me want to focus on falling and getting hurt and mangled and landing on a spire through my stomach or something like that, even though I don't really climb above spires. I take that and I point that and I turn it into focus. And then I focus on what I'm doing. But now I got a bunch of adrenaline running in me, so like my ability to focus is way higher. And I think I'd like channeled the fear and turned it into focus by being able to move what I'm focusing my fear on. And to that, I think fear is a tool. But that's the way I conceptualize it. It allows me to help. It allows me to use it in a different way. Like, and this example goes for regular tools too. Like, I don't know if this applies to you. I'm an engineer and I work on bikes, so I touch a lot of tools. And there are a lot of cases where I'm using a tool and somebody will be like, oh, did you know this tool also does this? And they can like use the tool for a new purpose. And I'm like, whoa, I never knew this tool could do that. Like calipers. Calipers can measure things in so many ways. When I took class and they were like explaining, and I was like, oh, I only thought calipers could do two things. They're like, no, you can measure like this and like this and like this and like this. And I was like, whoa, these are cool. And it like expands your ability to use the tool by expanding your concept of the tool. And I'm explaining this because I think this is an interesting thing to talk about, and I'm trying to pump out podcasts every week. But more than that, this is another way to talk about why I'm doing this podcast at all in the first place. And I think the episodes that I'm putting out are tools. They're concepts that you can use or have expand the concepts you already have so that you're able to have perspectives about concepts and understand things in different ways and hopefully be able to navigate the world easier or have more options when you are navigating the world so that you can make decisions that more align with your interests and your benefits. I think, what do they say in Schoolhouse Rock? Knowledge is power. I think that is true, but I think in society, sometimes the right knowledge is power. And so there is, I think, a usefulness to knowing tools and how different tools work and practicing with the tools so you can gain skill at them in their different functions. And all of this is so that at the point where you get that you're in a jam or you have an emergency or you come up against a surprise, you have a toolkit. You're like Batman. You have this belt of gadgets. You know how to use all of them in all their different ways, and you're ready, and you're like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen, but I got a Batarang, and this is how Batarangs work. Because when you have tools and you know how to use them and you're ready to use them, it makes life a lot funner. It makes it a lot less scary, and you're able to say like, oh, I've been around the block before. I see what's happening. Let me throw you one of these, rather than like, oh, what do I do? I've never like no. And I really am trying to give this concept of tools to try and make this like metaphor of the episodes that I'm putting out as being tools themselves. And I don't know how you might use them or you might share them, but they're things I think as concepts that can help us think about situations in our lives and help us to make decisions in those situations that are better for us or at least more informed decisions. Yeah. So I know thinking isn't always fun. Thinking makes my brain hurt a lot. Like seriously, I think you can get a mental workout like doing push-ups and then your arms hurt after doing a lot of push-ups. I think if you think hard enough, your brain can hurt because of it. They call it like, my brain is fried, or some other sayings, but like, it can take a bit to build up skill around a concept, or around any tool, even like a bow staff or nunchucks. It takes a while to learn how to use tools. And I think sometimes the really useful tools, or I think, put it better, sometimes we have really specific jobs or really difficult jobs or problems to solve, and they require skill or really specific tools. It's nice to like build up your category or your collection of tools over time so that you're ready when these problems come up, and you can diagnose the problem because you've practiced with the tool, kind of in like practice scenarios for the problem, and you also have the tool. And so you're like, all right, cool. Here's, you use one of these and you do it. Like, have you ever been doing some home improvement and you need some like weirdo tool that you've never heard of, but like without that tool, and this is like for working on cars too, where like without this one plumbing wrench or pickle fork or something like that, this job is going to be the worst job ever. It's going to be so difficult. But if you had that tool, it's just like bink, 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 and you're done, and it's over, and it's easy, and there was no risk of breaking anything. So what I'm trying to do is add to your toolkit, so when you come against problems, you don't got a Mickey Mouse, you don't got a MacGyver, you got the tool, and you're like, boom, here it is, I got the tool. So, I'd be really interested to know what are some useful tools you have, even if it's like a caliper or a right angle or something like that. Sometimes tools are cool to share. I'm an engineer, so I like physical tools, but also conceptual tools, because this whole podcast is about sharing knowledge and getting conversations to start. So if you got some interesting tools, or if you want to have if you think we can have an interesting discussion, let me know what you think, and we can probably talk about it. But in other news, I am doing these kind of talks where I'm trying to flush out new tools, because I think when I talk by myself, or when I think by myself, so I'm talking by myself on this podcast, and when I think by myself, like in my pensive time, I can come up with stuff and I gain concepts of stuff, but I think I benefit a lot from talking to other people, and it helps me refine my tools. And like I said with the calipers, learn how to use tools in new and exciting ways. And so I am making a big effort to not only have conversations outside of myself, but then like publicize them so other people can have the benefit of the learning process. I think watching the learning process, sometimes you listen to podcasts or you watch the YouTube videos and stuff, and it's just people, they practiced it 1,000 times, but they only show you the finished product, and it makes it seem like they're like perfect, awesome people. But a lot of practice went into it and a lot of thought went into it. And so I'm trying to like have those conversations live and record them and that kind of thing so that other people can see like how much effort it takes to sharpen your knife before you're able to go and cook with it. And sometimes you ended up buying 4 different knives because the first 3 knives were the wrong knives, and one of them was a fork, and you're like, why did you even buy it? I don't know why I bought a fork. I bought it and it's not going to work, so let's move on. And the whole process of getting to the point where you have the right tool, I think, is important for people to see. And so I'm trying to do some like more live conversations. I'm trying to do a weekly Instagram live chat with somebody to try and develop concepts, and then we have like the online workshops and the community discussions. Community discussions are coming back. Boom, where I shut my mouth and just create a safe space for people to talk and share ideas and do stuff like that. So if you want any information on that, you can head down to jordantremaine.com because I got my own website now. That's right. Boom. And it has all the information on my events, has some podcast stuff, and it has a link to my YouTube page in case you want to watch like previously recorded stuff, if I ever managed to do that, which I did at least once. There's at least one video on there. So definitely there is some content. But as time moves on, I'll get like more content. But yeah, what kind of tools do you guys use? What if you've listened to one of the episodes previous to this or in the future and then you came back to this episode, is one of the things that I explained, or did you hear something from a different podcast like really come and end up being useful in your life? Or did it help you have some utility in someone else's life? I don't know. Let me know. It's nice to hear when you have an impact on somebody, because if I'm just talking to a microphone and then nobody tells me that it's cool, then I'm going to be like, oh man, I'm all alone. But if you're like, yo, that was cool and really helped me, so thank you, then it makes me get a warm fuzzy inside and want to do at least one more episode. So anyways, I'm your host, Jordan Tremaine. This is the Perspective Podcast episode on tools, and I'm not Tim Allen, but I hope you liked it. Anyways, see you later.